or someone else who already has it memorized. Open your Bibles to the Beatitudes, which is found where? 5, that's right. We hitch on. In verse 3, you have done so well. You have come back week after week after week as we have gone through these Beatitudes. And I would have you focus now on Matthew chapter 5, verse 11. And really, I would like you to consider how far we've come over the last several weeks and even months. This is sermon number 9 in a series of 10 on the blessed battery of the Beatitudes. I have enjoyed this series immensely. The Memorize for the Prize, I've enjoyed. Our famous visual aid, I even got to visit with the guys in Rich's class this last week who helped make it, and girl that helped make it. And learning more about the blessed life Jesus has to offer us in this series. How living the Beatitudes is key to understanding how we can follow Jesus. Starting with humility all the way through peacemaking. It all sounds good. But then last week we sort of turned a corner. We turned a corner with the Beatitudes. And we talked about persecution being part of the blessed life. And we got a glance of what that persecution looked like in the story that I shared in closing. And I popped that story. Our good song leader heard that story, and she was able to come up and still sing through it. But do you remember that story of that 16-year-old girl who chose to do the right thing and was persecuted tragically for it? Now, this young girl in our story last week mirrored what Jesus did. Even though Jesus did things right, he was persecuted. But in the text last week, Jesus talked about how he was hated. Do you remember? This week, we're actually going to explore, we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about why Jesus was hated. And quite frankly, why we may be hated as well. You can follow along as I read Matthew 5:11. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil things against you because of me. Now you're 2'd in 2. If you've got your lovely bulletin handy, let me see your ID as the title under there is the text. The 2'd in 2, can we say it together? Be identified. Be identified. Last week's 2'd in 2 told us we'd be persecuted for righteousness, for doing good things, for being a good person. Today we will see we will be persecuted because of Jesus. We will be persecuted because of him. Now we are approaching Easter, but before Easter comes Good Friday. And you already heard the announcement about how, Lord willing, several of us will identify directly with Jesus as we hang on the cross on Good Friday. And we'll be identified as people drive by and say, who are those strange people? Why are they doing that? Well, it's to be identified. It's to say, this is what Jesus did for me. Now, that's the day we remember Jesus' execution. But why was he executed? We will see today. He was persecuted, insulted, and had all kinds of evil things done to him because of who he was. Now, our supporting text you'll find in Mark chapter 14. I'd really like you to turn over to that now. It's right next door. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We're going to have you go to Mark chapter 14. Mark's just a little bitty book. You can jump right over it. We're in Mark chapter 14, verses 53. And actually, as I was preparing the sermon, it just felt like I needed to go all the way to 72. So we added on some extra there. And we're going to go Matthew Matthew 14, verses 53 through 72. We'll start out going 53 through 59. Everybody there? Need a little more time. Sounds about right. I'll wait for you. We've got time. It's spring. There you go. Mark chapter 14, verses 53 through 59. Please follow along as I read. Then they took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, elders, and teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death, but they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, "I will destroy this man-made temple, and in 3 days we'll build another, not made by man." Yet even their testimony did not agree. Fill in the blank number 1. It was not a lie that made him die. It was not a lie that made him die. The lies that were brought did not stick to the man who was truth personified. Lying, the devil's native language, has been spoken about Christians since the very beginning. First century Christians were often called cannibals by unbelievers because they would hear about the rite of communion where we break his body, where we drink his blood, and people started to circulate, these Christians are cannibals. They actually eat people. Then students of history would know that when Rome burned, it was Christians who were blamed for it. Throughout the persecution of the Reformation and the Inquisition, all kinds of strange and crazy things were said about Christians. But the lies never quite stuck. In my early days of ministry as a youth pastor, it was found out that I had an earring. Well, in the late 80s and 90s, for those of you who lived through that era, you remember what that meant. Oh boy. And the rumors flew around. He had an earring. You know what that means? Then I came home and here I had a girlfriend. Uh-oh. Theory shot. You see, the lie didn't stick. Application. Have you ever heard a lie about another Christian? What did you do with it? What did you do with that lie that you heard about someone else? Or have you ever been lied about? How did it feel to have that lie come to you? How do you feel when you are lied about? And what did you do about the lie that you heard? Lies are damaging, but they're rarely deadly. So, again, what got Jesus killed? We find that answer in the next section of text that we'll dive into. Verses 60 through 65.